Hello, everybody. This is episode 6 of the Oatmeal Uprising podcast. This is going to be a continuation of the last one. In the last one, we kind of talked about cynicism in quite a lot of detail. We talked about how studies are represented in this modern world and how exactly they are misinterpreted, more or less. They are shown in a light that they are not intended to. So, a lot of the theme of the last episode was about cynicism and how you should take things with a grain of salt. The episode was literally titled A Grain of Salt. This is going to be a continuation of that one, but not exactly the same topic. We are going to continue the theme of cynicism and go through something. We are going through something that is personal to me, and at the same time, it is I'm going to be as impartial and as selectively transparent as I can be. I cannot be entirely transparent because it is a deeply personal topic, but I can be transparent enough to come out in mathematical terms of defining an anecdotal experience, right? So I'm going to be doing this episode in this sort of a way. So without further ado, I'll just get started into the theme of this episode. Give out a disclaimer before I actually start talking about this topic. YouTube enforces this policy that you have to give a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, I'm not qualified in any way to talk about this topic. I'm just kind of a nerd going through literature for myself, for my own personal experience. And I'm sharing this experience because there's no real reason I'm sharing this experience. I don't know if anyone is ever going to benefit from it. I'm not going to advertise something that I don't believe in, and I'm not going to uh, lead you astray from the thing that I don't actually believe in or I do believe in. There is no strong feelings I have about this particular topic. The strong feeling I have about is the topic of depression. Once again, I'm no expert about this topic. It's just personal experience that I would be narrating here. So this entire past year of 2025 was kind of hard for me. I would describe it in a rating from 1 to 10. If I'm describing my mood from a 1 to 10, the first half of the year, the mood was constantly at around 5 to 7. Okay. That means I would describe this as a will to live, a will to do things, a will to look forward to things that are coming around in your life. Then there came a particular point of time where it began slightly declining, and it kept on declining for a while until I would say I got to about a 2 on 10 rating. And it became quite difficult to get up from the bed and have any sort of motivation to do anything in life. Coming to that particular point, a lot of things happened. The incidences and why the mood came this low are sort of irrelevant. But if you take it from a big picture perspective, if you just plot out mood from 0 to 10, okay, 0 being dead and 10 being like outrageously alive, I would say I was on a 2 on 10 scale. So I began thinking about how to exactly improve this mood, and I was not able to. After giving a lot of tries, I was not able to do it myself. So I decided to go to a specialist for this particular thing, a doctor, and see if I could get any help, to come to an acceptable level, back up again. Right. So this particular problem has been happening on and off to me for a while, for a long amount of years. So, without going into as explicit detail as possible, I would say I was able to manage it personally for a while. I've been in therapy since 2023, on and off. I would say mostly on, less time off. And I would say that had helped me quite a bit before. But this time I realized I needed a pick me up. I needed a caffeine of sorts, just something stronger than caffeine and more deeply studied, and something that was not quite natural. So I turned to a psychologist in this hour of need. What my basic goal was, I just needed a will. I just needed some amount of energy that would make me get up from my bed and go about my day. I didn't. I sort of just did not have that kind of energy. So the bed rotting is kind of real in that case, and I did not want to go through that. So after going through the psychologist, we they kind of work with you. So a psychologist is a doctor, right? So they have gone through medical school, and they've gone through hours of research in a different modalities of treating treating different kind of depressive disorders. They have specialties in treating for anxiety. They have specialties in treating for post traumatic stress disorder and a myriad of different stress disorders. Right. So I went for the treatment of this particular. I did not know exactly how to describe that feeling that I had, but I would say it is a low mood kind of and low energy kind of feeling that I had. It does come under clinical depression, but that is for a doctor to decide and categorize what it is. I don't really think the labels really matter in this particular case. What does matter is the outcome of what exactly you're going through and the preconditions of what you're going through. So for me, the precondition was very simple. I did not have a lot of energy, and I wanted to go back to a state where I could go about my day. It took me, so the thing is, it took me energy to go to the gym, and that was not a particular state that I was very familiar with for a while. For the past 7.5 years almost, I've been going to the gym quite regularly. And the first time it became irregular, I realized something was not quite okay, because I could not force myself to go to the gym. And that is when I realized I needed something. I didn't have anyone else at that time to turn to for discipline's sakes and for exactly bringing me quite back into the world. So, like asking for professional help was quite a difficult decision to make. Like, if you even skirt around the stigma of it all, it also felt like a personal failure to me that I could not do it myself and I had to go to a specialist to get help. But at the same time, I do not regret any of the decisions that I've made. It's like it's like the Metal Lingus song, right? I regret won't waste my life again. I take a lot of my inspiration from wrestling and and music. So Metal Lingus and Edge would always inspire me to not regret things that I've done. But coming back to the topic, I decided to hop on to some medications. So there are multiple class of medications which are an entry into treatment of depressive disorders, right? So the entry class of medications are, so, yeah, before going to medications, there are like two basic hormones in your nervous system. There is serotonin, there is norepinephrine. Now I'm only focusing on these two because they are the first ones that a therapist usually tries to treat you with. Not a therapist, a psychologist. Usually, the distinction is more than a difference in this case because a psychologist can actually give you medications and a counselor cannot. So coming back to that topic, so when you go to a psychologist and they are supposed to start a treatment for you, if they decide on starting a treatment for you, it may happen that you go to a psychologist and they decide that you are lacking in vitamins, you are lacking in your nutrition. You first fix that, and then you go on to other modalities. But I was not one of those people. I had my nutrition was more or less good. My health markers were good, but I knew that I needed something stronger because it has been a while that I could not function on my own. And that was the reason I had started on medications. Psychologists are not making their markups on medication, especially in India. I don't know about other countries. Psychologists don't usually make their markups in medications in India. They have no incentive to hop you on medications. They Any good psychologist that you can go to, they would not try to force you on medication straight away. They would try to find a different way for you to go about your things. They may tell you to fix your diet, they may tell you to work out, because the cliches actually do work. That's why they are cliches. Getting up in the morning, getting more sunlight, getting more vitamin D. Now, if I was in a place to do all of that, more than I was doing already, it would have been better. But at that time, I was not. So at every time that I say that I needed some help, I am saying that this is a snapshot in time. This is not a permanent state of mind. Everything that we are describing here is a snapshot at a particular point of time, right? has a variance with time. Everything has a variance with your mood at that particular amount of time, and your health, and your all the other surrounding factors that also impacts the decisions that you make around that time. Yeah, so coming back to the two hormones, serotonin and norepinephrine are the hormones that straight up psychologists will try to treat in that particular way. So these are the modalities, because these modalities are safer than the other class of antidepressants, as much as studies are done on these particular antidepressants, so to say. So these particular class of drugs are called SSRIs and SNRIs. SSRI stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. SNRI stands for selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. So you have two hormones, serotonin and norepinephrine, that flow freely throughout your brains. So your brain, exactly, it is made up of the single unit of your brain cell is called a neuron. You have a chain of neurons communicating to each other. When two neurons try to communicate to each other to pass a signal from one neuron to the other, they communicate through electrical impulses. There is a space between two neurons called a synaptic cleft. In this particular synaptic cleft, information is received from one neuron to the other, and chemicals that flow from this particular space can be reuptaken, and the signal can get lost. So in particular cases of depression, it has been hypothesized, I don't know, from what the articles that I came up about with the mechanism of action for this particular class of drugs, and I could be wrong in this, so don't do take this with a grain of salt. Taking Going back to the last podcast episode, do take this with a grain of salt. So what I read in the literature overview about the mechanism of action is that the serotonin is reuptake. The brains would reuptake the serotonin in the synaptic cleft, and at that time, the amount of free flowing serotonin to be absorbed by the neurons, and to give you that. So serotonin is basically kind of the happy hormone, other than dopamine, endorphins, whatever you have heard in pop culture. Serotonin is also one of them, which is considered a mood hormone, mood regulating hormone. So the level of it goes dramatically down in your brain, and that way you can say you have a negative on your mood scale. Your mood keeps on decreasing. Okay, so this is the hypothesis. And if you go on SSRIs or SNRIs, they basically inhibit the reuptake of serotonin or norepinephrine. That means more free flowing serotonin. The serotonin levels are supposed to increase in your brain. The norepinephrine levels are supposed to increase in your brain. Now, this particular class of medications have many sub kind of medications associated to it. So we are going to go into the SSRI side of things, because SNRIs were not actually prescribed to me. I was on a single SSRI called as sertraline, and sertraline is one of those drugs prescribed as SSRIs. The first one that came to the market that I know is fluoxetine. So when I went to the psychologist, I had a particular set of demands for whatever medication I could be on. For me, it is very important to go and work out. I can't not. Second, depression also causes gastric distress. Medications also cause gastric distress, and I wanted to avoid both of them. That's not something I want to go through. I do not think that is worth it. Going through gastric distress is a pain I've seen people go through, and I did not want to personally go through that. Okay, so I had those particular conditions. At the same time, I wanted to be productive. There is a way to how my mind works, and I quite like it that way. I did not want to change it a lot, and I'll come to why I was worried about this later on. I did go through a literature overview before, a long time back, not right now, not when I needed the medications. But long time ago, I was interested in SSRIs, reading about SSRIs and SNRIs when Leo and longevity was kind of famous across YouTube. Rest in peace, Leo. I don't know what happened to him. I do not want to comment on that. But as far as the information that he went through, he was kind of a nerd as well. But he decided to experiment on himself. I never had the heart to do that, other than the natural, safe ways of training and nutrition. But I did not want to experiment on drugs ever. I was not kind. I was kind of in the Tom Cruise territory that you don't really need to. You should really not be on medications. And I I don't say that I was wholeheartedly support the way Tom Cruise went about it, but there is something to his feelings on this topic. Yeah. So going back to the topic, I keep on taking tangents because I do want to set up a picture in your mind about what happened and how exactly the process goes about. So when you go to a psychologist, put on you don't have to put on a show. You have to be as honest as possible. You have to say what you are going through and whatever thoughts come to your mind, how you wake up, how you go to bed, how much time you're sleeping, what you're eating, what you're not eating, how you are behaving with other people, how you're not behaving with other people, how you see the contrast in your behavior from a time ago to this particular snapshot of time. So you have to be completely honest with them about incidences that have happened in your life, about the way you think things work, about your beliefs, maybe. It's a short session, but you have to pack a lot of information there and you navigate through the things together, more or less. So, coming back to my topic, after all the information was processed by the psychologist, I was given a prescription for sertraline. The psychologist was very clear about how sertraline works. So she gave me the explanation on how serotonin reuptake works and how it is inhibited by this particular class of drug. Now, coming back to SSRIs, there are many kind of SSRIs, right? They are not the same compounds. At the end of the day, they are working in a similar way, but they are not the same compounds. Okay, their pyrokinetics vary considerably from each other. Their half life varies considerably from each other. So they don't have like an interactions that you would see in regular kind of drugs. In like painkillers having similar kind of chemical profile. They don't have a similar kind of chemical profile. They do provide similar outcomes. Now, sertraline is considered one of the mildest SSRIs, other than fluoxetine is considered a lot more effective in treatment of clinical depression than sertraline. And I would also tell you that the first possible side effects that are documented when you take SSRIs is in especially in children, it is not recommended because it may lead to suicidal ideations. This is not me. I would reference an article in the description section of this video that explicitly states that. This article is on PubMed. It's on a very reputed journal. So I would reference two articles with one with the mechanism of action of SSRIs and one with the long term effects of sertraline. Okay. What the purpose of this particular video is, I'm going to compare my anecdotal evidence with some kind of literature overview, and I don't want you to take any conclusion from it because it's anecdotal evidence, and I would tell you how my anecdotal evidence is also tainted. Okay. Coming back to it, I would overlay a graph about how I felt mood wise while being or while on and off of sertraline. So my entire experiment, let's say experiment in this case, went on for a period of about 12 weeks or 3 months of medications, and there is a period of not being on the medications on both side of them. But I was under the supervision of a doctor when I did this, up until the point that I wasn't. Okay, that is the first marker that you have to know that there is a taint in this data. Okay, so there is a taint in this data because I did discontinue the medication on my own. I did not consult a doctor that I wanted to discontinue the medication, and mostly because I could not get a consultation. It was difficult to get an appointment, but at the same time, I I decided to do it on my own because I got into an internet rabbit hole and I convinced myself that being off of the medication was the best case scenario for me because I wanted to return to the world. So coming back to the topic of this, I would overlay a chart. So basically, the chart is in front of me. So I'm referencing that. So this has three columns: the week, which is the time, which describes the timeline of my anecdotal experience, the dosage that I was given, and the average mood. So the clinical dose for sertraline that I was told the minimum effective was 50 milligrams, a regular dose was 100 milligrams, and the dosages went as high as 200 milligrams, which are under the supervision of a doctor. But outside the supervision of a doctor, I do know people who have taken a gram of this thing. Okay, so this I would not advise anyone to go beyond what a doctor recommends ever. You are supposed to follow what the doctor says. That's just a line in the sand that I would have people draw. There is a utility to experiments, but I do not think it is worth subjecting your mind to medications like this, which are going to alter your brain chemistry. In primates, at least, there has been enough research to know that the structure of your brain changes considerably over time on antidepressants, as well as during the course of depression. So, I'm not going to lead you astray from this particular path of going to this particular avenue. Even in depression, your brain chemistry changes quite a lot. You can imagine a load put on a single steel plate. If you keep on adding load on it, it's going to get deformed eventually. The principle of elasticity has a limit. It won't bounce back after structural damage happens to your brain. Okay, so depression does cause, it's like a hammer constantly beating on your brain, so it is going to eventually cause some structural damage, and you would probably not be the same as you were. Aging causes structural damage. Okay, aging changes the structure of your brain, same as depression. It could age you faster. It could, happiness could age you slower. So these kind of things you have to bear in mind when selecting, not just selecting, when thinking about the avenues that you can go to for your particular set of problems. Okay, so coming back to the chart. So it is 3 week dosing. So I go from -2 weeks, so which is the time when I decided that I would monitor myself before going to a psychologist and see how I feel. So my mood, I gave myself a rating from 0 to 10, as I said earlier, and the rating was described by every day. I took a rating every day and gave myself an average. So this was done before I went to the psychologist. I decided how my mood was. I needed to tell her this. But after this, I did not track the data after being on medications. I maintained a journal. Okay. So this particular averages that you see from weeks 1 to 12 when I was on the medication is after going through my journal entries. Okay, my journal entries described exactly how the mood I was in. This has been done in hindsight. Okay, this is not actively done at the time of. This is not an active experiment. This is a passive experiment that is exactly as hindsight suggests. Okay, and this is what I was referring to when I was talking about tainted data. I would come back to this. There is more amount of taints in this data because being aware of the modalities of the drugs and being aware of the literature review did change my perspective on these drugs. Okay, so going back, -2, -1, these 2 weeks, my mood was constantly at a low of, I would say, 2 on 10. So the contributing factors was appetite, was motility, and it was the urge and hope inside of me. Okay, so this is an arbitrary system. There is no there I could not give it a mathematically correct rating from 0 to 10. I was neither dead, I was nor outrageously alive, and I cannot describe exactly how it feels except give you a number about how you would feel being on a 2 on 10. basis. Going back, I would say generally I used to feel 5 to 7. Okay, so I felt like a human being, and at this point, I did not. This is the easiest way I can describe it. So going back to the experiment, so we started with a very minimal dose, 25 milligrams. This was the week I was supposed to run a half marathon, while I had not trained for running about 3 months. I had not run at all. 3 months were not particularly the greatest months of my life, so I had skipped out on training, on running training for quite a lot of time. So I had the I started with the lowest possible dose, and I tracked my mood. So I did see market improvement in the mood in those particular starting days. So I have marked it as a 3 on 10 in that particular as a uh, I have marked it as a 3 on 10 in that particular week. And I would say it was mostly because I knew a change was going to happen with the introduction of SSRI. So I would tell you what the psychologist told me. The psychologist told me what they have noticed in evidence is that the blood concentration of serotonin does rise almost quickly when you start taking SSRIs, but the actual noticeable effects in patients who are not aware of the literature uh, is seen after a long time. Okay, after 4 to 6 weeks, in fact. So what the psychologist wanted me to do with the 25 milligram dose was to monitor if I had any adverse side effects. So I was given a medication to manage gastric distress in case I had any. So I took that alongside etc. And and I would say there was a small improvement. So I was on a 3 on 10 on the basis of mood. Okay, so coming back to why average was taken. Okay, average mood for the week. We as normal human beings, I would say, we have a constant elevation and declination in our blood levels of blood concentration of every hormone, right? It's the same for testosterone, it's the same for estrogen, it's the same for serotonin, it's the same for norepinephrine. Why taking weekly averages is a good enough metric. You can take the median of it. I do not mind. I think both of them are good enough in this particular case. I would say average. I would say average is important because it sort of does average out. There are highs, there are lows, but there is a constant average to everyone's day. A day feels like a day. I know it's like a redundancy that I'm speaking on, but a day feeling like a, no, a regular day is is sort of the basis of taking averages for a rating, right? So this is the state that I wanted to a constant low average. I wanted to go to a constant middle average. Okay, I wanted to reach a baseline where I could do things myself. Okay, I did not want the medication to help me entirely. I wanted a crutch. I was learning how to walk again, so I needed a crutch. And this was my plan. As soon as I was able to walk again, I would kick out the crutch out of my life. Okay, so that was the particular plan. Yeah, coming back to it, so the 25 milligram dose went quite smoothly. I would say I saw a very small improvement, and with seeing now the taint in the data is I was aware that I had hope because I started doing something that I was not doing. So this is a particular taint in the data. It's like a placebo effect that you are taking something to be feeling better. Someone who is starved out of sugar is taking sugar. It's a market improvement. It is going to have an impact on your mood. So coming back to this, after a week or so, I after a week of this 25 milligram dosage, we went up to 50. So 25 to 50 seems like quite a big jump, but the 50 is the minimal effective dose of SETA in clinical literature. So we go back to 50 milligrams. So I was on the minimum effective dose, and this saw me. This is where I was still acclimatizing to the effects of serotonin, I would say. So, as per my journal entries and the incidences that happened, I would say this was pretty mediocre. I was once again on a 3 on 10. Um, but there are highs and lows and everything, right? So coming to the week after that, I went on a low. I went on a considerable low. And I did not realize why this was happening. You know, was I getting acclimatized to the 50 milligrams? Or was it the effects of my surroundings? And after the conversation with my psychologist, so I had to go back. I had a market declination in my levels even beyond the baseline that I was on. So I from a 2 I went to a 1.75 back to a 2. So it is bad. In that particular way, I would describe this as bad. And the will did quite. I was shaken in my will at that particular amount of time. So going back to this particular period of time, I was told it had a lot more to do with my surroundings and the things happening in my life than it had to do with the medication at that particular amount of time, because the dose was low enough to not impact me considerably, and I was still in the acclimatizing period. 4 to 6 weeks had not passed yet. Now, after this particular small amount of time, I went back to my medium of 3. So my baseline came up again, and once the baseline came up again, it was time to step it up a notch. So we went to an active dosage of Serta, which was 100 milligrams. Okay, and this saw me going through an actual noticeable change in mood. I went from a 3 to 4, and that felt great. Okay, I will tell you, for someone who has been in low mood for a long time, going to a baseline feels like winning a battle that I can't really describe. So going back to a 4, it felt great. I went to a 5 as well. So the mood was great. There was one particular week, where I was so I was taking a 100 milligram dose once a day at night, and what happened was I wanted to split the dose. So one night I took 100 milligrams of dose, and then the next day I took 50 in the morning. So at a particular time I was on 150 milligrams, and that was that was 150% of what I was supposed to be on, right? So that was a day I felt like an artificial high, and I would say that that is the outlier in the data that you will see here. That in the chart, that I went to a level of 6 on 10, and that 6 felt amazing. I literally went to every one of my friends and told them I feel amazing, because this is a high that I have not been on for a while. So it was still under the supervision of the psychologist, but I would say that that was the best phase of meeting medications. And I did notice after that, so this continued on this baseline. I would say returning back to this baseline felt good. At a certain point, it gets old. Okay, now you're used to the baseline. Now it gets old. Now you want more from life. You want to go back to what the person you were. So I wanted to go back to the person I was. And at the same time, I did not want to go back with the help of medications again. I did not want 100 to go to 200, which I'm not saying would have happened. If I went back to the psychologist in this particular case, I think I'm pretty sure I could have told her that I wanted to stop the medication. And what would have, because this, once again, it's my choice, right? What I'm putting in my body is always going to be my choice. So they are going to help you taper off the dose. So they are supposed to taper it off from 100 to maybe 75 to 50 to 25 and then to 0. It is not supposed to be a steep drop. And me as I am, I've always sort of thought the best way to get rid of something is to get rid of it all at once. And I stopped, all of a sudden. From 100, I went to a 0. So serotonin does have a half life of 21 hours, I think. So for the first 21 hours, I did not feel much change, because I think it was still in my system. So the highs and lows of serotonin that I was not used to had not returned. Okay, so what basically an SSRI will do, it will give you a constant level. Okay, a fake constant level. So a weekly average is because there are outliers in data, and then there are averages where every data point is close to each other. A middle line, whereas equal amount of highs and lows commanding to an average. That is the difference between real life and being on medications. So once you go back to an average where it is not the middle line, it is going to be highs and lows. This feels very, very off. Okay. And that is the thing that you see. The first week I was off, I went down to a one. This was the lowest I had been in my life, I would say. I've had low periods, but this was one of the worst ones. The only thing that got gets me through this particular period was I knew I was off of medications, okay, and I knew whatever I was feeling was not really real. It was an acclimatization. It was the headache that you get on high elevations. It's not a constant state. It's a snapshot in time. Okay, I think having that knowledge is quite imperative to our existence when we are not in a state that seems natural. Okay. So I was on that particular state. That was the New Year's between 25 and 26. So I had stopped the medications then. And within a week, I noticed, I think the half life was of it was over. I noticed a very marked improvement of hope. Now, once again, taint of the data. The timeline is quite important. The turn of the new years is going to give everyone hope. Okay. If your year has been really, really, really bad, the changing of the year on the calendar is going to give you hope. And I think I had that hope, that this year is going to be different. And that particular hope, sustained me quite a lot, and it is continuing. So I do now constantly feel at levels that I used to. I am back to a 5 to 7 on the baseline because I have things to do. I have things to get done. I have to record this podcast episode, right? So comparing this particular anecdotal evidence to literature overview. So even in literature, you see a similar kind of effect, that the uh, the effects of SSRIs on mood and the uh, the elimination of your symptoms related to generalized anxiety or related to clinical depression, the alleviation of it does not come on immediately. There is a 4 to 6 period window, and the anecdotal model that I followed kind of replicated this, but you cannot take this as evidence of what they say in the literature is true. The literature is done, demographics is quite important. Most of the literature studies are done in European countries or in North America, and they have quite a bit of different living conditions than in our country. Okay, so the demographic information is quite important to keep in mind when you actually go through this particular amount of data. And then I would say literature overviews aside, and knowledge of the side effects and all of the things aside, kept aside, this is just one particular evidence. No amount of science can be relied on one subject. A sample size of one, can you imagine that? If you had that problem in mathematics in when you were doing sets in your ninth standard, it would have been the easiest math would have been the easiest subject for you. If the sample size was always one. The sample size is never one. It's a stupid set if the sample size is one. Okay, so this particular anecdotal evidence that I wanted to give was, I just wanted to shed some light on SSRIs, and I wanted everyone to kind of evaluate. If someone is going through something and thinking that medications is going to help them, I want you to take a step back, evaluate how your mood feels. Okay, but more importantly, I don't want to detract you from the usage of medications. I want you to be as honest and as possible. Go to a good doctor. Be literally as honest as possible. What do you feel, what do you think, everything. Okay, what has transpired, what has not transpired, what you wanted to happen, what you walked away from, or what you walked into, all of it. See, the thing about tragedies are, they all seem preventable from the outside. From the inside they are not. That's why it's tragic. From the inside, uh, even if it was very preventable from the outside, from the inside, I would not have gone through what I went through if I was not me. But I would not have been me. That's why everything that goes bad is tragic. Okay, so concluding this episode, okay, this particular thing is an anecdotal evidence on how SSRIs impact your brain chemistry. At the same time, this is not an advertisement of medications and a detractor from, or is it a detractor from medications? This completely hinges on your personal situation. Now, I described I described my mood is in as analytical terms as possible, because I don't think the incidences are quite relevant to this particular information. I think when mathematics comes, it makes pictures quite a lot more clearer than I would say this. Then I would say anything, any kind of experiences, sharing of experiences would, So I think this levels was the max I could get in terms of vulnerability to an online audience that may or may not never watch it. But if they do watch it, I would feel very stupid being very vulnerable. So this is the easiest way I could come out and share this particular topic. And going back to the grain of salt, I went through this particular phase in a lot of cynicism. I was very cynical about medications. Okay, I did understand their utility. A person who cannot see without spectacles needs to wear spectacles. You won't judge them for wearing specs. It's the same thing. I didn't judge people on medications. It's just I did not personally want to be on them. And when I went on medications, it felt like a personal failure. It felt like a moral failure, and it wasn't. I don't regret the decisions I've made. I think it was a very valuable experience. I think I got in and got out before a long term impact had happened on me. I was looking for a short term impact. I got my short term impact. And I think I'm going to be done with them for a huge chunk of the next of my life, however long that is. And yeah, that's it. That has been episode 6 of the Oatmeal Uprising podcast. I have not decided a title for it yet. I do not know what follows YouTube's community guidelines. So we are going to be meeting you in the next episode, which is also going to be following the same thread of cynicism. And it has something quite interesting. I have been going through Rene Descartes' philosophies for the next particular episode. And there is going to be an interview coming shortly. I think so. Don't hold me on to that promise, okay? It's not a promise, but I'm trying to get something off, okay? So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.